On this episode of the John1911 Podcast, the Amish are back. Wadcutter guns, Trump wins, Cincinnati loses. Well, hello, stranger. Welcome back to the John1911 Podcast. We've been on a hiatus for a little bit. This is episode 353. As most of you can probably surmise, the reason we have been slow producing content is because of construction, at John1911. So as I indicated in November of 2023, it's hard to believe it's been a year, and some of this was only supposed to take 4 months. Operation evacuating the city of Cincinnati is in full force, and it's been a lot going on. So why build one building when you can build 2 buildings for the price of 3 buildings? So it was determined fairly quickly that we needed to expand what we initially thought we would need for some facilities. So we had to bring the Amish back in to do some more construction, and it was some pretty heavy duty construction, and that has taken a lot of time. And they're done, but now we're waiting for the electricians to come in and finish up behind them. There shouldn't be that much to do as far as the electricians are concerned. But the electrician that we use, because he's like this master class electrician and he's been vetted, he's allowed to come over here. I am at the range right now. He's allowed to come over here. So we're kind of at the mercy of him. It's Saturday. What is it? The Saturday, November the 9th. So the election was this week, so we'll talk about that too. So I'm not going to bother him on a Saturday. Well, I'm hoping he'll pop up on Monday and Tuesday, and we can start, moving with some of that. So, I have some funny Amish stories, and we'll kind of get through some of the things I want to cover, and then probably in the next day or two we'll do a podcast with the boys. And we'll start getting the podcast coming out on a more regular basis. So episode 354 will be kind of a regular John1911 podcast and blow the dust off of it and do all that. So the Amish were here, a whole bunch of them. They're great. I have to tell you, these Amish guys, like, I really, really like these guys. I find them just exceedingly nice people and good people, and they're funny. And, we get along well. So not that I would want to join the Amish church. I don't know if I'm allowed to, but we're friends. And one of the things that they were telling me, because this had come up in another conversation, it was kind of a surprise, was that they actually have the subject of making payment and credit cards came up. I was like, I'm sure you guys don't accept credit cards. And the guy goes, he's like, oh yeah, we have credit cards. We have 2 of them. He goes, I have a credit card that I use for my business. And then he said, I have another credit card that I use for points, and I buy groceries and all that kind of stuff. And there's an Amish grocery store out here, which is on my to-do list to go to. But, they do a lot of transactions, if they can, with this credit card. I don't know. For all I know, it's like Amish International. I have no idea. I didn't ask him. I'm sure it's on American Express. But he was telling me he does it for the points. And I'm like, it's for like Sky Miles or like airplane miles? What? He goes, no, Amtrak points. And so it got us talking about the train system. And the reason why I was interested in it is I do have to go to Washington, D.C. fairly regularly. And while I haven't been much, it has started up again this year. I've already had to run up there once. And it looks like I'm going to have to run up again possibly this coming week or the following week. And all these Amtrak trains all run into Washington. So in theory, I could go to Washington on an Amtrak train. It would take me 24 hours to get there. And I think to take an Amtrak train to Washington, I don't know if I'd have to go to Chicago first or Cleveland first. So from greater Cincinnati, that would kind of suck. But anyway, neither here nor there. Talking to the Amish guys, and I didn't know they had Amtrak points. And he's like, he proceeds to tell me that he and his family they have taken the Greyhound bus before. And they're not a fan of the Greyhound bus because of all the problems that they run into with people on the Greyhound buses. drugs and criminal activity and all that kind of stuff. And so, you know, he doesn't want to be super judgmental, but he's also trying to tell me that it's a higher class of customer on the Amtrak trains. They don't generally have, you know, a lot of issues. Though he did say that he did witness one issue one time on an Amtrak train, but he was impressed that security showed up and threw this woman off the train. So I didn't know if it was train police or not, but because I don't think he would have understood that. But I was just, you know, it was an interesting conversation. And so I'm asking him, I'm like, so when you're on these Amtrak trains, do you sleep in a chair? Do you get a sleeper car? How does all that work? Because, you know, they're Amish. There's a ton of them when they travel. So he's like, well, we get enough points. He says, if I need to, I do get, you know, space in a sleeper car. And he says, if I can get the points, I try to get meals. And he's like, you know, he said, you can get a steak and do all that. And he said something that I thought was pretty cute. He said that, you know, you can get a steak on the Amtrak train, and says, you know, it's a good steak, but it's really expensive. It's like $36. And he said, he says, it's a good steak, but it's not like something really nice, like, or not something that to the level of, like, he was intimating was nice, like a Texas Roadhouse steak. And I have to admit, I have a confession here. I kind of discovered, for me personally, Texas Roadhouse within the past probably 12 or 18 months. And so I've been going to some Texas Roadhouses. I really hadn't been to one since I went to a SHOT show with an old boss of mine in Tampa, which is really dating myself because most of y'all don't think that SHOT Show happens any place but Las Vegas, but it got to be so big it had to stay in Las Vegas. But they used to alternate Florida, Las Vegas, Florida, Las Vegas. So I thought that was an interesting story about, you know, he was, you know, talking about the Amtrak train and, you know, how good the food is or how expensive the food is. And it's okay, but it's not as good as like what you can get like a Texas Roadhouse. And, you know, I thought that was a cute story worth sharing. On some bad news, kind of for me personally, but we have become friends. I'm losing most of my Amish, at least this group. There's a ton of them out here. They are moving to Montana. And I'm not going to say where, but apparently they're going to start a new community out there. And so a lot of them have put their properties up for sale. And they're going out to, you know, Montana to start. And like, he was telling me how this all works. And, you know, there's sections, like if you're west of the Mississippi, you know what a section is. If you're east of the Mississippi, I doubt you do. I believe a section is 640 acres. And so their group that they're doing, different members of the community, depending on their goals or what they're trying to do. Maybe like if they're older people, or maybe they don't want a lot to take care of, they might just go as, you know, a few acres or 30 acres, but some people want 100, some people want 300, some people want a whole section, and, you know, do all that. And so they have to go out there, and they're going to spend, you know, a couple of years building houses and barns and, you know, building out infrastructure. But we've agreed to keep in touch, and I will probably go out there and visit them at some point. I just think they're hilarious. After years of working, you know, not that I'm a snob. I'm not a snob. I'm sure sometimes I can seem like a snob on the podcast. I'm sure Kraken and Danny might disagree. But, you know, after years of working nights and working with dirtbags and working on the street and dealing with sometimes the highest of high society, but the lowest of low of society, I appreciate nice people. I appreciate nice neighborhoods. I appreciate nice experiences. I have nothing to prove anymore on, you know, roughing it or toughing it out or, you know, being the master of the ghetto. So yeah, at my age, at 53, I'm gonna hang out with my Amish friends, you know, and eat Amish food and maybe do Amish hunting. I don't know what Amish hunting is. I'm just making this up as I go. And I wish them the best, and maybe we'll start doing podcast and video content from Montana, maybe on some hunting trips in the future. On some inside business, or I guess John1911 business, we're going to be making a small change to the website. Not that any of you would particularly notice, But we have we've got the shooting, we got the shooting section, workbench section, we've got a milsurp section, a 1911 section, a Blauser section. That's obviously very specialized. And we have a podcast section. Well, I'm going to expand. I've been thinking about doing this for a few months. I'm going to expand the hunting section to hunting/outdoors because, initially I was putting things like range maintenance and tractor work and cutting and trees under like the workbench section, but that's not really appropriate. And then we've got Kraken. He's doing all kinds of stuff with his new UTV, I don't know what you call it. I can't remember, H2O, or is it a Kawasaki? It's one of the more, fancier brands, not like, Polaris. It's, whatever it was. Go to the website, you can find. Go to the hunting outdoor section on the website, and you can see Kraken's vehicle and some of the road trips they're taking. He sends me videos of them going through the woods and all that. And so I figure it's time to kind of expand the hunting to the outdoor section because, doing that kind of stuff, maintaining trails for UTV riding, maintaining trails for hunting, maintaining trails for shooting lanes, deer blinds, that kind of stuff. So we're going to probably, move some stuff around. We're going to expand the hunting section to hunting outdoors. I'm going to pull some of the old content off of the workbench section that more realistically should go in the outdoor section. But, here's where the debate always happens. It's like, all right, I've got some mechanical stuff I have to do to the tractor. I bought some stuff to upgrade some hydraulic attachments to the Massey. Well, would that go in the workbench section or would that go in the outdoor hunting section? See, these are the kind of problems you have when you're the editor of a newsletter and of a website. So if you have any feedback as to what you think I should do or how I should do my job, please send it to me at podcast@John1911.com, and maybe I can un-F myself and figure out what the future is going to look like for the website. Well, I got to talk about it. It's been hanging over our heads. It's the biggest story to come down the pike in a very long time. No, I'm not talking about the 2024 election. I'm talking about the drama surrounding the SIG P320. So I don't know if this has been noticed as much by the gun community. I think probably the SIG guys may be getting exposed to some of it, but the SIG P320 is getting its ass kicked lately. So let me go through a couple things that have come up since we've done the last podcast in like a month. I hate to think it'd be longer than that. So it looks like the Northern California Regional Public Safety Training Authority, so whatever they're called, has banned the SIG P320 at its range. Let me give the other one before I give my thoughts on it. Also, it has come out, Washington State Criminal Justice Training Commission. I believe that's probably their state agency. Like there's the OPATA is for Ohio. Is it IDLET or whatever it's called for Indiana? So Washington State Criminal Justice Training Commission is banning SIG P320s from all firearms training, BLEA, Advanced Patrol Tactics. Information regarding SIG P320s. There have been 2 discharges. Let's see here. There have been 2 in Washington within the last couple of weeks involving SIG P320s. Just dropped a mandate that SIG P320s will no longer be used in firearms training until further notice. As of now, BLA recruits are unable to use them. And apparently it had come out that there were recruits that were currently going through their state schools with this gun. They're yanking their guns off their bodies. They're not even letting them. They're going to have to transition and probably reshoot. Maybe they'll grandfather them, in like their previous scores, because it depends on how they do the scoring. Have to maintain or hit a certain level at a certain point, or whether you maintain through your training. But they're yanking the guns off they're not kids, but so that's coming. Now the other issue, and this is where I kind of I warned about this on, I don't know if it was the last episode or if it was the episode before that, but there have been a couple of incidents where the SIG P320 has discharged at school functions. And one of them, I believe, was at the Marble Falls football game. And then there was a Cambridge, Massachusetts, I believe a school resource officer that had a SIG P320 discharge. And I believe both of these cases were the gun was in the holster. And, you know, the gun community, in particular the SIG guys, and I'm not capping on the SIG guys because, you know, look, if it wasn't the SIG guys being upset about something, it would be the HK guys. It's not the HK guys, it's the 1911 guys. You know, there's always something you can find. But I kind of intimated this on a podcast, and I said, these guns discharging at schools is going to kill this gun, because right now this debate has been looked at and really only addressed or even paid attention to within the confines of either professional shooters, competitive shooting, or law enforcement. And, you know, fighting with people and doing whatever. School teachers, PTA members, school boards start getting reports that, yeah, there was a gun pop at a school. There was a pop at, you know, generic whatever elementary. There was a gunshot. What happened? Well, there was apparently the school resource officer's gun discharged. What, was he fumbling with it, or what's going on? No, apparently it went off in the holster. Google. There's a big debate here about whether these guns are safe, whether they go off in the holster. And once one of these school districts gets their teeth in this and they all start talking to each other, this gun, I am telling you, is fucking done. This gun, they will, once one or two schools bans this gun, and then you've got now a couple, what I would call, again, we call it the OPATA, Ohio Police Officers Training Association, or the OPATA state organizations ban this gun, you're going to have a monkey see, monkey do phenomenon. Whereas, you know, let's say, this hasn't happened, but I'll put it in context here. Let's say OPATA, Ohio, bans the 320 from use. There's a lot of, you know, communication between Ohio and Indiana and Ohio, Kentucky, or Ohio and West Virginia, or Ohio and Michigan. And, you know, police officers know each other, politicians know each other, SWAT teams know each other, school board and school teachers and principals, they know each other, and they all start talking, and then they start figuring out, wait a minute, this is an issue? Wait a minute. So they banned this gun over there, but we didn't ban it here. And if something happens here and somebody gets hurt, in some of these instances people are getting hurt, and I'll follow up that in a minute, all it's going to take is the lawyers to come through, put somebody under oath and say, what did you know and when did you know it? And then worse, why didn't you know that X school board or X state agency or Y organization banned this gun and your organization did it? And so now there's going to be a scramble of covering your ass. And the gun community doesn't understand this because they don't deal with bureaucracies. They don't deal with insurance. They don't live in the real world. This gun is in huge trouble because once these school teachers figure this out, and then it's going to be a scramble with police departments, especially ones that are like heavily controlled or accountable to a city council. Oh, there's going to be big trouble because it's going to be the same problem. It's going to be Department X has these guns, and they start figuring out the city next door, they have the same gun as we do, and they've banned everybody from having this gun. Why do we have this gun? Or even if X department doesn't issue this gun, why would we even allow this gun on the table of equipment? Why don't we ban it? We don't issue the gun. Well, then ban it anyway. Shouldn't be a problem. And this will start to spread like wildfire. Now, the escape valve for all of this is is the the military pistols. But actually, as I was preparing this episode this afternoon, it's 12:50. This was published. Let me see here. What's the date on this? What is the date on this? Oh, come on, Walter, in Austin. It happened again. Texas officer injured by holstered SIG P320. And this is, let's see here. And this apparently happened recently. Let's see, the 24th. There's been 2 incidents in Texas where officers have had their guns discharge in the holsters, and one of them is critically injured. And critically injured means surgery, disability, rehab. It's insurance, and this is gonna be an issue. Now, with that said, here is a story from, let's see here, it's Seacoast Online. And there's another one. I found this a couple other places. And it's like, well, the military's not having these problems. So, we're all telling ourselves, and even privately, we were telling, John1911, we were telling people, if you are going to have a SIG 320, see if you can't go ahead and just get one with a thumb safety. Or get the M17, M18 versions. Get the thumb safety version. Because it doesn't seem like this is happening. Well, I have some bad news. Documents detail U.S. soldiers shot by their own 6 Sauer guns. Military says no reason for concerns. So here we go. Around lunchtime on February 8th, 2023, inside an administrative office at Fort Eustis in Virginia, I think that's the old Fort Lee, in Virginia, a sergeant with the Army's 221st Military Police Detachment stood chatting with his supervisor. Another soldier on his way to an office refrigerator tried to squeeze past a sergeant in a narrow hallway. That's when their gun holsters made contact. Quote, all I remember was the clanking, unquote, of the 2 holsters, the sergeant would later tell an Army investigator, according to a military report, and the gunshot. A bullet from the sergeant's own gun ripped through his foot, leading to surgery and 6 months of rehabilitation. Photos included in the Army's report appear to show a blood-stained carpet. Quote, soldier says this, don't feel safe around these weapons anymore, the sergeant later told the investigator. Let's see here, and it goes on for dozens and dozens. SIG maintains the SIG P320, which is now standard issue for the U.S. soldiers around the globe, is safe. NHPR, that is prevail. That's 13 cases, and then shooting for. Okay, here this is the thing. The question that I started this whole section with. Well, the Army's not having these kind of issues because they're just not, right? Quote. The shooting at Fort Eustis is one of 9 separate incidents involving the U.S. military detailed in documents obtained by New Hampshire Public Radio that echo the claims made in many of the lawsuits against SIG Sauer from individual gun owners and police officers who say their pistols fire without a trigger pull. Unintentional shootings between September 2020 and June 2023. The Army, the Air Force, and the Marine Corps incidents report, which are obtained through a Freedom of Information Act request, detail unintentional shootings from 2020 to 2023. I'm going to save some of that. Soldiers at U.S. military facilities in Missouri, Virginia, Louisiana, and Amman, Jordan were seriously injured. Now, maybe this is punctuation, maybe this is phrasing, maybe this is 100% correct. What I just read didn't say uncommanded discharges at these locations. It said it's intimating uncommanded discharges with serious injury. That's bad. That will get the Army's attention. Soldiers at U.S. military facilities in Missouri, Virginia, Louisiana, and Amman, Jordan were seriously injured when their SIG Sauer gun unintentionally discharged, according to Army records. Though the incident reports are heavily redacted, in at least 2 of the 6 shootings involving Army personnel, witnesses stated that the soldier did not have their hand on or near the trigger when the gun discharged. 2 other soldiers were shot by their own guns during training exercises. A report released by the Marine Corps details an unintentional shooting out inside a guard booth in Okinawa, Japan. investigators reviewed surveillance footage and determined that the security guard did not mishandle the weapon and that it fired despite the gun's safety being in place. NHPR has requested but has not yet been provided a copy of the surveillance footage. Because, look, let's be real. As I was reading it, you were thinking it, especially the dude in the guard shack. It happens. There was one down there at Lejeune not that long ago where, maybe it was Cherry Point, where guys on guard duty have an ND and they shoot each other. This happens, okay? Well, according to investigators, and they're looking at surveillance video, Marine Corps on guard duty was not fucking with his gun, and it went off. And apparently it's on videotape. The Army, for its part, denies the guns involved in these incidents displayed any, quote, material flaws, unquote. I wonder if that's a specific term for a specific reason. An Army spokesperson said the 6-hour guns were extensively tested and function well. The pistol remains in service with all the services at this time without restrictions, the spokesperson said. The military initially told NHPR that it worked with specialists from SIG Sauer to review these incidents and that investigative teams found no reason for concern. But when asked for details about what role the company played in these investigations, an Army spokesman reversed course and said that representatives from SIG Sauer were not, in fact, part of any military review. That's weird. That's stupid weird. That is a public affairs officer party foul right there. So I'm kicking everybody today. Let's see, anything civilian military style. Let's see here. SIG P320's model, SIG Sauer's P320 model was first released in 2014. Yeah, it's only 10 years old. They've probably been working on it for a few years. So let's say it's a 12 to 14-year-old gun. Selling more than 2.5 million units. In 2017, the Department of Defense selected the P320 as its standard sidearm for soldiers, following a multi-year, whatever, blah, blah. The military, so how many? The deal, valued up at $580 million, called for SIG Sauer to provide weapons, ammunition, parts for 10 years. That's interesting. There could be an out here. Following the Army selection of SIG Sauer, in 2018, the Marine Corps announced it would also issue the M18 to all soldiers to carry pistols. The Navy and Air Force have since followed suit. Now, that typically happens with service pistols. According to the Department of Defense, military officials identified problems with the gun, including the risk of drop. But the concerns about the gun safety emerged during the early testing by the military. This is interesting. Early testing by the military. According to the Department of Defense report from 2018, military officials identified problems with the gun, including the risk of, quote, drop fire, unquote, which is the Army's term, in which the weapon could go off without a trigger pull if dropped in certain angles. Records show the SIG Sauer worked with the military to modify the weapons after these findings, including changes to the gun's trigger mechanism. The company eventually outfitted a civilian version of the P320 with a new trigger as well, and offered owners of older models the ability to voluntarily return their guns for new components. SIG Sauer is maintaining the P320 is safe from drop fire even with the older components. What's interesting here is these updates to the military guns with the thumb safeties are still discharging. They're not obviously being, quote, drop fired, unquote, but something's happening with these. Kraken and I were discussing this a little bit, but maybe it's the trigger unit, the trigger fire control unit, FCU, I think that's what they call it. Maybe it's getting twisted in the frame. Because I guess it's sheet metal. I will say this. I used to work with and have contact with some military folks, and they would be showing up with the M17, and so we expressed an interest here, John1911, of having some M17s. Doc went out and got one because he still has contact with them. We have never actually executed a pickup on an M17 or M18. We still might, because it would behoove us to for the reference collection, because this is an official sidearm of the U.S. military, even historically. But there's trouble here. And it's now moving from the gun nerds, the shooting competitive guys, the reloading guys. It's moving to police departments. State agencies are dropping this gun. Now there's issues with schools and cities are going to be dropping this gun or banning this gun. They're going to have an opinion on the gun. And that now there's documented issues. There are documented issues with at least some of these guns discharging in holsters on military bases or military, military personnel in the holster. Now, I'm sure not every one of those was a gun going off in the holster. There's always, boys will be boys, and they start putting their little fingers on things and futzing with things when Uncle Sugar isn't looking, and that's how accidents happen. Quote, the Army has full confidence in the quality, performance, and safety of the more than 244,000 M17 and M18 pistols issued to our servicemen and women. That's interesting. I never knew I don't think I recall what the actual number was of 244,000. Well, here's another one. Let's see here. In April 2022, a senior airman at Tinker Air Force Base in Oklahoma told investigators that his gun fired instantly when he slid the external safety into the off position. He wrote in a statement that, quote, all of my fingers are underneath the trigger well. That's his quote. A second airman witnessed the discharge and confirmed the soldier's fingers are not on the trigger. The incident led to an investigation, but no conclusions are reached for what caused the gun to fire. The problem with incidents like that is it gives everybody an out. I swear it wasn't me. I swear I didn't touch the trigger. But when you look at the videos, you're like, yeah, the dude was touching the trigger. We've seen this all the time. That is what Glock ended up having to deal with. It used to be called Glock Leg. Now I guess we're going to have SIG Foot. That might be the title of the podcast, SIG Foot. But with all the video cameras and body cameras and security cameras everywhere, they're getting enough of these instances with military and law enforcement, and especially in schools, where these guns are discharging, in holsters. Here's another one. At Camp Pendleton, a Marine infantry officer's gun discharged, despite the officer's claim that they, quote, never touched the trigger. Again, that's another one of those he said, she said. The Marine was ultimately accused of, you got to be fair. Here's the rest of it. The Marine was ultimately accused of mishandling the weapon, though the documents do not say whether the individual faced any discipline. The incident report following the shooting in a security guard booth in Okinawa, Japan, where the guard's gun went off, still, quote, unsafe. An investigator recommended that, quote, an engineering review of the M18 be conducted. So this is kind of a run-on statement. Marine at Camp Pendleton, an officer was accused of mishandling a weapon. There's a second incident that we referred to earlier in Okinawa, Japan, in a guard shack where it's like, Uncle Sugar ain't here. 19-year-old, Lance Corporal is, in there like, ooh, look at my gun. And it went off. Well, apparently security camera says the gun went off in the holster. Marine Corps told NHPR that professional armorers and engineers did inspect the weapon involved in the incident and found that it was complete, functional, included all safety equipment, and was operating properly. A spokesperson added, quote, the weapon performed as designed, and the conclusion reached was the weapon will not fire unless the safety is off and the trigger is pulled. But they've got video of it going off. So here's the conclusion, and I'll get off of this a little bit because I don't want to beat a dead horse. If you're of the camp, and it's a legitimate camp to be in, to say that it's not the gun, it's the holster, and that might ultimately end up being correct, but in the real world, I have news for you. In the real world, guns and holsters go together like peanut butter and jelly. They don't live separately from each other. In the real world, people that carry guns for a living are issued guns for a living. In particular, handguns. These guns live in holsters. If the world has not designed a holster that can't keep this gun from going off with an external thumb safety, mind you, that's the bad part. That's always been the argument of the holster people. Well, the retention holster, something in there, it's hitting the trigger, it's twisting and it's discharging the trigger. Well, that holster isn't knocking the gun off safe. Because that gun being unsafe keeps that gun from going off. Well, something's going on with these guns, whether it's shock, whether it's twisting it. And if it's the holster, it's you still got to pull it. You know, I mean, you got to pull it because if you have the option, the Army's not going to pull this. They don't have the option. It's too big to fail. I mean, it's like the F-35, but in the F-35's defense, I think the F-35 works out pretty well. Maybe ultimately they'll shake these out too, but any organization that is going to be on the hook for issues, is going to be on the hook for insurance, or going to be on the hook for civil liability, that doesn't really happen in the Army. They're banning these guns. This is going to be like the Black Hawk, the Serpa holsters. Once the stink starts getting out and, more accidents happen and there's a chance of some, controlling legal authority, there's an Al Gore phrase, controlling legal authority being under oath and being asked, what did you know about the SIG P320 discharge issue and when did you know it? Whether you're a gun guy or not, once you get that information, you're obligated to make corrective action, if not for yourself personally, to cover your ass, possibly to protect your organization or city or department. I knew as soon as these guns started going off at schools that this gun's in big ass trouble. And I don't know what the future is for this gun. I don't know if it's going to go down in history like the M14 is like the biggest piece of shit. I got news for you, the M14 is a piece of shit. That it's going to be the shortest lived service pistol in U.S. Army, arsenal history, or whether it'll somehow march on and they'll figure this out. I would tend towards the Army's going to have to figure it out because, it was such a drama replacing pistols. It was such a drama that going through all of that again, trying to get everybody to give their finger input into this and doing another service pistol, re-roll would cost so much money and such political drama that I just don't think the Army wants to do it. They hate these pistols. They don't want to deal with it. But if they have to kill this pistol, they might have to. The only wild card I can add to this, and this is not hyperbolic or out of the realm of possibility. If President Donald Trump gets a whiff of this issue, he tends to make rash decisions that, are from the view of his political liability. It is not out of the realm of possibility that the President of the United States issues an executive order as Commander-in-Chief to the Department of Defense. You better shit can these fucking guns in 5 minutes or you're all fired. It is entirely possible if Trump hears about this. Because the boy, Trump gets mad. And if people make the argument, the same argument I just made about what did you know, when did you know it, you think Trump is going to be in a position where he's getting interviewed by Leslie Stahl at 60 Minutes, accused of not caring about American soldiers being killed or injured or maimed, America's servicemen and women, the best and brightest that we have, are being crippled by their own guns? You think he isn't? If he gets a whiff of this, buddy, SIG better watch out, because it could get ugly fast. Phew, okay, that was ugly. They didn't call me loquacious for nothing. Let's get off that. I recently discovered something that I never knew existed. I become more and more curious about full Wadcutter guns, just as something to shoot and play with on our range, because they cut little cool holes in paper, and I've never actually. I'm sure I fired some kind of full Wadcutter round, but it probably wasn't a revolver. Well, no, I think I possibly fired a Smith & Wesson 950, whatever they call those guns, wad gun. But it turns out there is a company, Rock River Arms. Most of you know who they are. I've never had a Rock River Arms gun. I didn't know they were considered, I don't know if they're considered decent guns or not, but some of the prices, it's like, they might be. Apparently, Rock River Arms makes full Wadcutter 1911s. And it's like, okay, and I've been interested in getting a Wadcutter gun. But what was interesting about these, and Rock River Arms, they make all kinds of these with full rails on the top, like PPC guns and all this stuff. But they have a 5-inch gun, 1911. It's got modern features, beaver tail, skeletonized hammer. It's got ledge sights on it, and it has a rail. And it's like, well, so it's kind of usable. And it's like, I don't know. I mean, I don't know how much I would shoot it. And I don't know. It's like, do I want another 45? I have so many 45s. I don't know. Could be interesting. Maybe. I don't know. Or I don't know. Is there an option? I'm kind of a 9mm guy these days. I don't know. Does somebody make a 9mm full Wadcutter gun? I mean, no, obviously there's a 38. I don't know. I'd be open to a 38 Wadcutter gun, like a Jim Clark gun. I think 38 and 45 are considered probably, maybe that and 32 are the most kind of accurate pistol calibers. But yeah, Rock River Arms, Bullseye Wadcutter 45 ACP, 5-inch stainless steel A+1 semi-auto pistol. And I don't know, maybe you can cut it for a red dot, who knows. In kind of world news, it's worth mentioning just a couple things, kind of some bookends on some stories that probably should have been decided a long time ago. The first thing is Joe Biden, here in the waning days of his administration, has apparently going to allow U.S.-based PMC companies to operate in Ukraine. That's something that probably should have been done a long time ago. Politically, I can see why not, but because Democratic administration, they hate, they love PMCs until they hate them. Hillary Clinton loved Blackwater until she hated Blackwater. But it's interesting, the Democratic president, American PMCs work, and I don't know. I think you could get, instead of a lot of these cuckoos that are going over there and, some of these international legions, and the Ukraine doesn't really make a big deal of this, but the Kurds have the same problem. They get these international volunteers, and, it's one thing if you get an international volunteer who has military experience, or even if you get an international volunteer that maybe his heart is in the right place and he's willing to do what he has to do or learn or listen. But some of these people that just show up unvetted, what they're doing is they're kind of like influencers. They show up, they take a bunch of selfies, and they're really about building some kind of story to build a resume to monetize off of it. They're not really interested in doing the kind of work that needs to be done, or, unglamorous work, or actual, even if you want to do combat. The guy who, the second person who was sitting outside of the Trump golf course for 12 hours, the second accused assassin against Trump, he was one of these people. He had gone to Ukraine for that very reason. And we'd seen this with people going into Syria to help Bashar Assad's regime. And then eventually they would kind of get, the politics of that turned. They ended up in northern Iraq trying to get on with the Kurds. And, some of these guys had a hard time coming home. So, a more vetted, controlled PMC situation that can be paid for, say by, members of your, the Axis or the willing allies, European countries, Canada, Japan, if they want to send funds. I don't know, that has some interesting possibilities. It could work. I just think it's interesting that a Democratic presidency on the way out the door is like, well, we got to help Ukraine because we don't know what the future of Ukraine is going to be with Trump. And so let's try to lean in on what works. And so they put that in place. I don't think Trump would unwind that. I don't think Trump is as anti-Ukraine as people make him out to be. Not that you need to be for Ukraine, but it'll be interesting to see what happens with that. The next thing that has come out, and I think it's I think Trump even ran a commercial about this in the closing days of his campaign. During the Olympics, there was a big brouhaha about a female boxer, a women's boxer named Iman Khelif. I don't know what the person's real name is. And they were saying that the person was trans and the person was a guy. And it's like, no, you're not. It's just an athletic looking female, or, this is all ugly or that's all ugly. And, I guess they tried to hide it. Well, it's come out. Now, that person, straight up male, has XY chromosomes, and it's all coming out. And it's just a crazy world we live in. And all you have to do is watch some of those boxing matches with this person beating the shit out of these girls, and you're like, yeah, this isn't in the spirit of competition. This is just wrong. And it's like, well, let's get this out now before Trump gets in office. And while I'm sure it doesn't really have a whole lot to do with Trump, I just think it's interesting that these are it's like one of the stories, like with Hillary Clinton, deny till long enough, and then it turns into, yep, turns out it was true, but let's all move on. We don't have to keep talking about this. Let's just move on. And that's typically how I would say mainstream media operates when they're dealing with scandals. And I think this Olympic thing was a big scandal. They denied it until enough time has passed. Oh, yeah, it's true, but let's move on. Let's move forward. Don't move back. Come on, let's just go. Come on. That old thing, we're going to keep talking about that problem? Yeah. Yeah, I see you. We won't get into this too much because I'll save a lot of it for Danny, chief political correspondent Danny. But we're gonna have to talk about the election cycle somewhat. And I guess I have a confession. On some level, I was kind of glad that the last month or so of the campaign we weren't doing podcasts because we were too busy with all this construction going on, because it's just so overwhelming, all the stuff. Maybe I would have felt differently if I thought Trump was going to win. And there were times when I did think he was going to win. But to be honest with you, the day before the election and the day of the election, I didn't think he was going to win. I was wrong. It also needs to be said, since we're talking about things I was wrong about. And look, I'm wrong all the time. Just to get that clear, just because I have a podcast doesn't mean I'm right. I'm wrong all the time. I get the joy and experience of being wrong publicly, but I don't pretend about it. I actually address it. And so here's a couple things where I was wrong in the past, just to kind of, hit the best of, to set you up for what I was wrong here recently regarding the Trump-Biden or the Trump-Kamala election. I came out, and I remember when Rand Paul was running for office as senator in Kentucky, and I hated that guy because fun fact, I don't like Rand Paul's father. And I know there's going to be a lot of people on my side of the aisle that like Ron Paul. It's because they're kind of memory holding a lot of the bad stuff about Ron Paul. Ron Paul is an anti-Semite bigot piece of shit from the 70s. I remember Ron Paul from the 70s and like early 80s in his newsletters. Oh, I absolutely do. Not that he's wrong about everything, but there's a lot. But his justification for a lot of the stuff that he thinks, he's hanging it on the wrong people, and he's kind of a piece of shit. So I shouldn't hold the sins of the father against the son, and I did. I was very, very, very against Rand Paul. And I have to admit, at least within the confines of the lanes that Rand Paul has conducted himself as a U.S. Senator all these years, he won me over. I'm a Rand Paul supporter. I'm sure he and I don't agree on every single thing. I'm absolutely sure we don't. But I count him as a positive. And, I publicly had to eat my words on that one. And, I do it willingly. Hey, I mean, I'm glad to hear it. I didn't think Trump was going to win. Trump won. I'm so happy to be wrong. I'm happy to be wrong about Rand Paul, and I'm happy about Trump. Let's see, what else was there? There was I guess on this election cycle, I will admit that I was a Vivek Ramaswamy guy. I still am. Not that I know that much about Vivek. I mean, like I'm obviously a gun guy, very pro Second Amendment. I think the Hughes Amendment should be repealed. I think the National Firearms Act of 1934 is unconstitutional. You know, we can go through all this kind of stuff. You know, do I think Vivek is, you know, at home, like, you know, putting, you know, linseed oil on his milsurp rifle stocks, trying to keep him hydrated, you know, trying to keep him from drying out? No. Just like I don't think Donald Trump is not a dyed-in-the-wool gun guy. Like, he's a New York billionaire real estate developer that wears Italian loafers and with his little supermodel wife. Donald Trump and I don't have anything in common, except we might enjoy the same restaurant. Vivek, you know, I feel like Vivek, while I don't know for sure certain how he would defend some of the things that I'm super interested in, obviously, like the Second Amendment. You know, his grasp and understanding and appreciation of the Founding Fathers and the Federalist Papers and how our system works led me to believe that he was going to be a possible stellar pick as vice president. When they picked J.D. Vance, I hated J.D. Vance. Hated J.D. Vance. And not without some justification. Live in Ohio, J.D. Vance, senator from Ohio, took Senator Rob Portman's seat. J.D. Vance hasn't lived in Middletown or Cincinnati in forever. He's lived in California with Peter Thiel, doing all that stuff. He's got a home, I think, in Northern Virginia, maybe Alexandria, somewhere up there. He's a carpetbagger, okay? He doesn't live in Cincinnati. Their investment firm that he had a fund or whatever he had set up. It's basically a mailing address downtown Cincinnati. I mean, I ran it down. I was like, okay, what business is? I've never heard of this business. I'm in the business community. I'm a businessman. And I'm like, what the fuck? This is bullshit. None of this is here. You know, I found his house, and it was like, now that he's vice president, I'm not going to tell you, but I mean, like, I found his house, and it's, you know, like, it would be the kind of house that you could buy, and, you know, it's nice, and you could come and visit and whatever, but he don't live there. You know, kids don't go to school there. I mean, come on. And it was just like, you know, I thought J.D. Vance was going to be like another Jeb Bush or Mitt Romney, just one of these party guys who's going to just say the right things I need to say. And I was just like, man. But J.D. Vance started to get, and I'll tell you what I was really mad about is I was really pissed off at Donald Trump Jr. On the J.D. Vance thing, because the kids are the one that pushed Donald Trump to choose Mike Pence as vice president. And Mike Pence did not really turn out to be, you know, what I would say, he was a safe choice, and maybe he at the time you could make an argument he kind of brought that wing of the party in, you know, and you know, the kids again. Now here we are, Don Jr., and for some reason he's got his head halfway up J.D. Vance's ass, and I don't understand why. I don't understand what the relationship is. I haven't seen that much of J.D. Vance, and when he first was coming out and the media was harping on him, it's like, yeah, it's not looking good. You know, he seems kind of uptight. And then J.D. started to get his legs, and he started talking to the media, and then he started doing all these podcasts. And actually before then, when he did the debate with Tim Walz, I was completely impressed with J.D. Vance. Do I still like Vivek more? Yes. Has my appeal of J.D. Vance gone way up? Yes. Was I wrong about J.D. Vance? Yes. Do I know for certain that J.D. Vance would, if given the opportunity to snap his fingers to repeal Hughes, to roll back these import bans, 922R, cutting barrels being imported, torch cutting stuff, the NFA, 1968 Gun Control Act, would I think he'd do all that? Probably not, but maybe. And that's come a long way from frickin' Don Jr. doing this again. You're fucking us, you know. So okay, I was wrong. I was wrong about J.D. Vance. Now with that being said, I guess I should say this. on election night, I had decided I wasn't going to watch any of the coverage. I actually wasn't even going to stay up and watch what was happening. I was just going to go to bed and just like get on with my life. That's kind of what I did in 2016. In 2016, if you'll remember, listen to the podcast, they were all saying that, we got to wait for Pennsylvania to come in. And it's just like, frickin' Pennsylvania. It's so corrupt. It's always been this crappy state. Sorry, Pennsylvania. I live next door to you. I know what's up over there. Hey, look, we got the same problems here. You think Cleveland's not corrupt? You think Youngstown's not corrupt? Yeah, it is. And it was like, well, I'll just go to bed. And then I started watching the numbers. And I wanted to see what the real numbers were. So I started looking around because, I don't watch television. I don't need to listen to some talking head to tell me what he thinks. I just want to see the numbers, dude. And I found the best coverage that night was it was presented through Newsmax. I never watch Newsmax. I never go to their website. I don't consume any Newsmax at all, ever. Zero. I mean, absolutely zero. It's like I'm still kind of pissed off at Fox at their behavior in 2020, and it's like Newsmax is just going to be more of the same. I don't want to hear that. But I went to their website, and they had the best map of the counting, and it was supplied by this group called Decision Desk HQ, DDHQ. Then you started looking around after the election, and it turns out a lot of people were using DDHQ as their source for tracking the election, the counts. And so I don't know who DDHQ is, but I'll tell you what, they had a hell of a night. And what they were doing, when the way Newsmax was presenting it, is they were giving you a map of the U.S., and you could literally, as the counts came in from various counties, they would show the state trending either blue or red, and you could watch it switch back and forth. Like I saw Pennsylvania switch twice. I saw New Mexico and Arizona switch a couple times. And then you get down into it, and then you start looking at which counties have come in and which ones are red or blue, and you're watching, 67% or 10% reporting, and you can watch the numbers in real time. And so, for example, and I'm kind of, Kraken, I mean, it's getting to be late. Kraken, he goes, Fox News has just called North Carolina for Trump. And I was laughing. Like, I got news for you, motherfucker. I mean, it's like I was looking at the numbers. I called North Carolina for Trump an hour and a half ago. And one thing that became clear as I kind of would occasionally check in on some of this stuff, Fox News got into a lot of trouble on the 2020 election. In particular, they called Arizona early. Turns out that they have never been proven wrong. Chris Stirewalt worked at Fox. He was probably their chief political correspondent, and he got terminated. He was put on leave, and everybody wanted to kill him. Chris Stirewalt is a pretty honorable guy. Do I think he's, like a low-key probably Democrat? Yeah, he's from Wheeling. I'm family's from Virginia, West Virginia. I like Chris Stirewalt a lot. So, I mean, I was really hurt to see how Fox treated him. But the result in 2024 is Fox News was so crazy conservative on calling any of these states, it was almost doing a disservice to, if you were watching Fox News and you were like, I'm waiting for the state to go, which way is it going to go, which way it's going to go, you were kind of running blind, waiting for Brett Baer and Britt Hume to tell you what to think, when you could have just been on DDHQ or Newsmax's website and look at the vote counts and the spread, and you could have been much more informed earlier as to what was going on, what was trending. Fox News was gatekeeping the data, and they wouldn't predict anything until it was crazy. I mean, it was crazy how long it took Fox to call stuff. And no one's going to talk about it now to you, except for me, but I think Fox News is going around saying, we had more coverage than whatever. Yeah, your coverage was terrible. And, the internet is so much better at this than the television talking head people. So, yeah, that was the thing that night. But, Trump won, I was surprised he was winning. I ended up staying up till like 2:30 in the morning because I couldn't sleep like many of you. Like, I can't believe Trump's winning. I can't believe Trump's winning. But circling back to all the construction and the issues we've had around here and all this, it's been kind of a hard 12 months here, John 1911. And I appreciate all of you guys sticking with us. I called it. Locally in Cincinnati in the state of Ohio, lower left-hand corner, southwest corner of Ohio, has always been known as kind of a conservative bastion, a Republican stronghold. And what's been happening is the Democrats and very left Democrats have been taking over the county. They started taking over city council, 15, 18, almost 20 years ago. And then they would move on to county-wide offices, then become county commissioner, and then they started becoming judges. And now, like Greg Landsman, he was one of the pickups. He might be the only pickup for the Democrats in 2024, and it's here. It was I don't know if it was Ohio 1 or Ohio 2 because Ohio lost a congressional seat, but it basically was Steve Shavett's original seat, and then there was the colonel. I can't remember his name. He's a doctor, and he stayed there for a few terms, then he's retired. But that's gone. That's gone Democrat. And then what's happened is in Cincinnati, this Republican stronghold, I told you they've been taken over. We've had this Democrat lesbian, shouldn't make a difference, but I'm going to say it, Democratic lesbian sheriff who can't run the jail. She keeps guns unsecured in her car, and they get stolen out of her car, parked in front of her house, and she lives in an urban area. Surprise, shit gets stolen out of your car, and she's never really held accountable in any of this. We've got this woman who is the Teresa Teagate. She's the chief of police of Cincinnati. She seems okay. She's fine. But she seems kind of like a weak person to me. And if she hears this, ma'am, I'm sorry, but I'm just calling the way I see it. And, one of my issues with now that you got the lesbian Democratic sheriff, you get this woman who's a chief of police in Cincinnati, and now the Hamilton County prosecutor, which has been, I didn't know this until they lost, Melissa Powers, who I got to look up some information about her. You guys will find it interesting. Melissa Powers was the prosecutor here. She was appointed a year and a half ago because the last Republican who had been here for 25 years, Joe Dieters, I think he went on to the state Supreme Court because he was rewarded because it's getting loose down here, and he's not going to have a job, so they put him on the Supreme Court. She was appointed as she's a longtime prosecutor. I think she worked as a muni court judge. She did some other things. She's a good seasoned civil servant, prosecutor, attorney, judge. She's a Republican, and she's kind of a pretty woman. She's 60 or in her 60s, and you're like, why am I saying this pretty? It's inappropriate. That's a foreshadowing as the story I'm gonna tell about her because it's very interesting. And so she was running against a woman who has never worked as a prosecutor, never really is. Woman's like her name's Connie Pillich. She's this liberal whatever person, and she's never worked. She's never prosecuted a case. She never worked in a prosecutor's office or what you call the DA's office. It's not her background at all. But she's a Democrat, and she won. And it's apparently with the first time in 92 or 94 years in Hamilton County, Ohio, which is Cincinnati, that the prosecutor was not a Republican. And if you look at the county government, they're all left-wing Democrats from city council now. Prosecutor is now a left-wing woman who's never worked as a prosecutor. You've got the lesbian sheriff that doesn't seem like she does that much as a sheriff. And you got this woman who's the chief of police for the city of Cincinnati. And ma'am, I mean, no offense, the reason why I kind of kick you is because I don't feel like if the crazies come to town and they start tearing up the city and the riots that we've had here, that you're going to put on the riot helmets and you're going to lead your police officers down Fifth Street and say, this is my city, you're not going to burn it down, I'm going to beat the fuck out of you. That's not who you are. I don't believe you're going to stand tall. And that's why John1911 decided to get out of the county. We decided last year it's time to go because I can see the writing on the wall and what's going to happen. The value of things are going to change. The politics of things are going to change. And Donald Trump and the Republicans had a hell of a night on 2024. And everybody listening to this podcast, most of you are super duper happy because we win. John1911 has been evacuating Cincinnati for a year, and what I predicted has come true. And the night of the election in 2024, Cincinnati lost. It's going to turn into St. Louis or Chicago. It's over. But the story is not quite over. Let's circle back to Melissa Powers. So Melissa Powers losing the election as prosecutor in Hamilton County is not a reflection of her at all. It's just what's happening to the city. The Democrats are taking over. I mean, they're kind of socialist communist. They're taking over, and eventually they're going to run out of money, and they're going to want to merge the city with the county. That's why I'm getting out. But she has something that most of y'all probably have heard of, but you don't realize it's her. So there was a serial killer going around the country in the 70s and into the 80s, and his name was Joseph Paul Franklin. And Joseph is a white guy and stone cold crazy racist person, okay? And he would go around and he would shoot people. He would shoot black people. He would shoot interracial couples. Like, he would set out and wait for I'm going to sit up under this bridge or do whatever he would do. Like, I can't wait till some interracial couple walks by and I'm just going to gun them down because race. And he's just kind of a crazy person. I mean, not kind of. He really, I mean, they didn't know who it was. Well, he shot, it came out, he shot Larry Flint. So any of y'all who ever saw Larry Flint going around in his gold-plated wheelchair, or you saw that movie with Woody Harrelson, Joseph Paul Franklin is the guy who shot Larry Flint. And also for Chief Political Correspondent Danny, you may remember this name. He also shot civil rights activist Vernon Jordan. He was also, I think, the lawyer for Bill Clinton. Before, obviously, Bill Clinton became Bill Clinton. This was all in 1980. So anyway, Joseph Paul Franklin gets picked up. He gets nailed. And he's sitting somewhere in some prison. And we had a case here in Cincinnati or Hamilton County of, I think it was on June 8, 1980, Franklin, which we didn't know at the time, an unknown person shot and killed cousins Daryl Lane, 14, and Dante Evans Brown, 13. The two victims were on their way to a neighborhood convenience store at the time of their murders. While waiting on an overpass to shoot a racially mixed couple, Franklin shot the boys instead. The case remained unsolved for over a decade. Okay? So what happened was, in 1997, this Joseph Paul Franklin guy, he got picked up and he's sitting in jail. And Melissa Powers, an assistant prosecutor in Hamilton County, they suspected that he was involved in the killing of these boys. And so he went down to wherever he was sitting in jail, and she started talking to him. And it's not unlike the movie Silence of the Lambs when Clarice is there talking to Hannibal Lecter. Melissa Powers was a very attractive woman, and Joseph Paul Franklin, the serial killer, he was so taken by her, he felt like he wanted to brag, and so he started confessing to all kinds of shit. And it was true. And that's how Melissa Powers made her bones, like her famous bones around here in Hamilton County, is she got him to confess. Let's see here. In 1997, Powers traveled to the prison where Franklin was incarcerated for other murders and obtained his confession for the killings of Lane and Brown. A jury convicted Franklin in 1998, and he received 2 life sentences for the murders. She went on to become a judge, and then immunity court, and then juvenile court. Then she became prosecuting attorney. in 2023. So I'll have some pictures of Joseph Paul Franklin and Melissa Powers and I guess Larry Flint and the two victims, the two boys, and the end of the book on Hamilton County justice, because the future is going to be about give them room to destroy or whatever they do in Baltimore. Okay, we've been going over an hour. I've been going over an hour, and so I'm going to go ahead and just wrap this up. I'm going to give you all a police blotter, and then, some of the other stuff we'll circle back with the boys maybe in a day or two and do a full-blown podcast. So while some of these may not seem like police blotter stories, at least, well, they are if you think about how it's done. The first one is 3 men have been indicted, I think in New York, Southern District of New York, for a plot to kill Trump, an Iranian dissident journalist, and I believe 1 or 2 prominent Jewish businessmen. I don't know I should say business people because I don't even know if it's men, but definitely kill Trump, kill this Iranian journalist woman. I've seen her before. She got great hair. And when you think about it, it's like, the left says that Trump is a Russian agent, or he's, all this stuff with Russia, and now Iran, who is a close ally of Russia, would like to kill Trump. There's been rumors that Ukraine would like to have killed Trump. I don't know if that's true or not. But they're all scared. They're all scared of Trump. The Chinese are afraid of Trump. The reality is, don't kid yourself. The Russians are afraid of Trump. The Ukrainians are afraid of Trump. The Iranians are definitely afraid of Trump, but they want to kill his ass. So that's the first one. The second one, and this is a police blotter story, but it's not being presented as such. There's a woman. She's a young woman. She's a singer named, I can never pronounce her name. Dua Lipa, D-U-A is her first name. If you're listening to the podcast and I'm not saying it right, ask your daughter. I'm sure your daughter knows who this woman is. She's a pretty big star, travels around the world. She had a show scheduled in Jakarta, Indonesia, and they canceled the show because of, they said what's not really going to be safe for the viewers or for the attendees. And it's like, what does that mean? Well, what it really means is it means terrorism. So something was going on, just like how the crazies was it in Belgium or was it in England? I mean, it's in Belgium where they blew up the Ariana Grande concert, killed a bunch of young kids, young girls. Well, something happened with Dua Lipa in Jakarta on her world tour, and at the last minute they canceled this concert. And it's not being just safety. Oh, we got to be safe. It's like, read between the lines on that one. That's definitely a police blotter story. The final one is police in France get a call. Man's committed suicide. Please come take the report. Clear the call. And so they show up at this place. Man committed suicide. He looks kind of weird. They do an investigation. They look into it. Apparently the guy maybe he used to be a good-looking dude, or maybe he wanted to be a good-looking dude, but I guess his final surgery that he had did not meet his expectations and may have made things worse. He got depressed and then killed himself because, he looks like, a crazy person. And it's like, well, what did he possibly have done? Are you thinking cheek implants? Are you thinking, did he get like the synth, the fake synth injections that the dudes put? And, like they've got these fake muscles because it's really just, oil and it's crazy looking. Like, no, the reason why this is making the police blotter, because it's a suicide. So they got to clear the call. He killed himself over a botched beard transplant. And I'm really putting him on the police blotter just so I can show a photograph of what a beard transplant, botched one, I guess, looks like. I have never, ever, ever heard of that. I always thought getting a nice beard for most men, even if you didn't have like good facial hair when you're younger, as you get older as men, as the testosterone kind of just courses through your body, you grow more hair. And so if you're a young person and you're like, I don't like my facial hair, I've got patchy facial hair, I want to look like, whatever these dudes that look like on the internet, Just grow up. Trust me, your time is coming. Don't go to Dubai and get a beard transplant and then get all depressed and kill yourself, all right? Well, this wraps up episode 353 of the John1911 Podcast. If you want to see any more stories or pictures or links of stuff like this, including a beard transplant, please go to the website at john1911.com. That's JOHN1911.com. Remember, it's all about shooting guns and having fun. We back, baby. Have a good day.